All right. Welcome, everybody. I think I'm the last person to speak before lunch, which I think we're all excited for. So that's excellent. Yes. So as mentioned, my name is Kate Rilling. I'll go ahead and have an introductory slide. I am the global process owner and director of travel and expense at ServiceNow. I have been at ServiceNow for a little over 11 years, all of that time spent in the travel and expense space. I started the program when it was 1,200 employees, and now we're trying to crest above the 30,000 mark. So obviously a great span of growth during my time at ServiceNow managing the program. You'll hear a little bit about that today. A few notes about myself, since I will be sharing some other personal notes. I have a husband and two sons, 7 and 9. They're both active soccer and baseball players. And we love to get off-road on the weekends, do our rec sports, and at any given time, try to venture off for long weekends at recreational parks. We just did Sequoia National Park, I think, last month of the month. What? And for those of you that don't know, if you have a fourth grader, you get free access to all of our national parks in the United States. So you can go on the nationalparks.gov website and check that out. All right, here, we'll get started. I'll be talking today about how ServiceNow is actually shaping the future of workforce careers through that workforce planning adventure. I call it an adventure because it's been a longer journey for me than I think it probably has been or would need to be for most. But that's what I'm sharing with you today, is a little bit about where I had some, successes and failures along the way, and the lessons that I've learned and that my team has learned through that journey. Oh, that font is quite small, so forgive me. All right, so prior to COVID, I had already joined back in 2013 at ServiceNow. And again, we had a pretty small employee footprint at that time. Over the preceding years, we went ahead and we were developing end-to-end global policies. We had our processes in place. Thank you. We had our processes in place, and we were working on getting the technology in the right place. We had gone ahead and globalized to where we were using a seamless travel and expense platform. We added AppZen during that time period to start looking into how we could automate the function of our audit. We also had a seamless ERP integration for financial posting. So at that point, I really was feeling like the program was operating best in class. I really felt like, it's in a good place, it's working, it's fairly touchless, it's fairly quiet. So I was really looking to focus on furthering my personal career development opportunities at that time. However, then came 2020. So obviously with 2020, the world was faced with unprecedented change in the way that we work, and an entirely new wave of strategic change was imminent. So there was a lot of new demands on our T&E programs, I think we can all say. So as we band together internally to weather these changes, a true strategy on scalability of these new processes was missing from my approach. While I'm incredibly proud of the team and what we were able to accomplish through a very trying time, we were running a sprint, and we were really not preparing for the marathon of scaling the program permanently for success. So we leaned in heavily to the process and the technology. However, we were missing the key to making it sustainable, which was our people. As new projects continued to present themselves, day-to-day operations suffered. And while the team and myself were dedicated to keeping things running and executing against our goals, personal development opportunities were steadily declining. So here's where we talk about my personal journey in workforce. I'm going to read pretty straight my slide here. So as practices began to normalize, I was personally struggling, with the growing dependencies on me to fill those gaps. So these are gaps that I had created with my own poor workforce management through this major industry change. I was eager to return to my development opportunities. Like I said, I really felt like I had built a pretty good standardized program, and I could start to venture off and think about growth opportunities for myself. However, not recognizing the role that I had played now in digging myself deeper into the operations, I couldn't clearly identify my own role in digging myself out of the operation. So when confiding in leadership about my interests and plans to make a career change, they listened, they understood, I began by simply identifying that I was going to hire a potential successor, but I was met with the observation that there was still a lot of work to be done within the ServiceNow T&E program. I couldn't help but ask myself, do I have to do this work? Can't I just move on? I think it's time. What hadn't clicked yet was that, yes, I have to do the work in order to move on. I couldn't see the flaw in the fact that I couldn't just hire someone to pick up the problem that I had created and take it forward. It's not going to work that way. So across our staff, we were called together for a workshop. The pre-work was assigned, and supporting staff was delegated to assist with that work, which was very much needed, at least for me, where I was at that time. What I didn't realize as I leaned into the assignment, though, at that time, was that the organization was responding to my challenge. It was the beginning of a journey that would not only bring incredible personal growth for myself, but lead to professional growth for myself and the entire organization. So I can't say enough about how ServiceNow really leaned in to hearing that I, as an individual, had the interest in changing paths, growing my career, and not just staying stagnant in the problem that I had created for myself. So preparing for that journey. Workforce planning is a marathon and not a sprint. So again, as I said, this was an adventure. It probably took me longer to figure out than many, but that's why I'm here to share my story. So following the conversation in 2022, that formal process excellence initiative was launched. The pre-work was designed to help us each respectively present our program assessments and with full process decompositions. We were given templates upon templates. And a lot of us said, geez, this is a lot of work. Like, what are we really doing here? But it helped lead us through the mindset shift. And again, for some, this may not have been anything new. Those that have gone through process excellence and green belt and all of those other types of certifications. But for me, it was very much a stretch assignment and very much a stretch assignment that I needed. This gave me the opportunity to fully see where I had the glaring gaps or variations within the function that I had created. And it was the chance to see what was hidden in the forest beyond the trees. So if at first you don't succeed, as I mentioned, this wasn't a just steady stream of success. I did have a few stumbling blocks across the way. So it wasn't that simple. A few templates and a presentation aren't going to lead to an automatic mindset shift. And that was surely my problem. I was still focused on the technology in the processes alone, the things that I could immediately control. As activities continued to overwhelm the team, we saw attrition, but without a clear plan for how I planned to navigate us out of this, my backfills and hiring were put on hold. I needed to get back to the process decomposition, but this time I needed to lean into the people. So I started by first crystallizing what are the services and responsibilities that my function held to support the company. How was the draw on the function maturing? So stripping things all the way back, as you can see here, we started with our vision. What are the spans that our functions need to scale to? What are all of the end user requirements that we need to be supporting as a business? Again, prior to 2020, we had a pretty set function: receive the expenses, audit the expenses, post the expenses. You have a global policy, keep it standard, keep it simple. Great, so your processes are in order. However, as we plotted our activities and we started to rate them by current health, in many cases, we found that there were net new activities that processes and technology could not alone solve for. Playing a stronger role in shaping travel behavior, strengthening our policies, and providing the necessary actionable insights to run the business all required the program and the people to mature. So we had to get honest. How many of the activities were being managed in the appropriate levels today? Was there even room for the net new activities that we knew we needed to have put up? Specifically, the more strategic and complex ones. Did we have alignment on what the program needed to deliver to our enterprise in order to be successful? By laying out our activity groupings by complexity, it prepared us for the truth. Were any of us really being given the opportunity to truly bring our best work to the table? As we proceeded with that in mind, it was time to take my hardest step, which was to take the people out of the picture. As you can see here, we have our levels and spans. We don't have the individuals. We're really just looking at what are the functional areas of operation and what are the levels of competencies that we really need to be focused on dedicating to those activities. So we had to stop looking at who was doing things today and just look at the bottom line, which is what on this screen needs to be done. What part of it is involved in the future span of the program. So in order to do this, we needed to be much more explicit in the structure of our activities. You saw on the prior slide the level and spans, but how are we going to organize these activities in a way that we could really focus our people in a meaningful way? So rather than having an all hands on deck, or let's give this person that activity, clearly defining each of the pillars of the process by activity groupings. This helped determine the role requirements for a healthy organization. And before hiring or placing anybody in any role to take anything forward, we had to remove the bias and assumptions about what people were comfortable doing and focus on what are the right things for them to be doing for the company and for each of those roles. All right, time to put the people back in. So by taking the people out, we were able to see where do we need to fill these gaps. When it went to putting the people back in, we knew we were still going to be left with some potential gaps. So once the roles and required competencies were identified, we set out to rate where our existing teams had the constraints. And that's right, put those people right back into those buckets. In some cases, we were missing entire roles, as you can see in that entire bottom span of activities. We had nothing in place that we were ready to quickly pivot into addressing those gaps. In others, we knew that with the right development opportunities and with clearly outlined roles and responsibilities, our existing team members could be successful in developing themselves and growing into their future careers. Deployment. So with leadership sponsoring, which was very key here, it was time to prioritize critical investment. With our requirements clearly defined, we could accelerate progress. As it came to hiring and development specifically, we had new clearly defined roles, which we shared with each of our existing team members. We had meaningful one-on-one discussions where we could better understand their individual aspirations and potential at an individual level. And once the roles were redistributed, our knowledge transfer began. We were being mindful, though, as you can see, we did have some of those gaps where we had to do external hiring. We want to be mindful that with continued automation plans, including those that we've all heard today in some of these important sessions, we want to make sure that our volume assessments keep those automations in mind. Being careful not to overhire for today's volume when we know that hopefully through the redistribution of all of these roles, we're going to have more strategic thinking going on in the organization and hopefully accelerate the deployment of our AI technology and other automation opportunities in order to longer term fill out that peak volume requirement for workforce. All right, so where we are today, current pulse point, everybody feels pretty excited. So the excitement is always contagious, and I can't say the importance of that enough. I tend to be kind of a big geek for these types of things. I love, the motivational part of the whole piece and keeping the team motivated even when we're all drowning in work. So that was definitely high importance. But seeing the team come alive at their opportunity to share in owning each of their own careers has been an honor to witness. I'll say the skills and the special interests had laid untapped. There were things that I had team members that had been sitting on the team for 4 years and watched certain processes struggle and just simply not raise their hand because they didn't feel empowered to do so. Or maybe they didn't feel recognized as somebody qualified to do the work. But through those important one-on-ones and having these discussions and really laying it all out there on the table for them to understand, here are the respective opportunities. You own your career. Let us know where you see yourself accelerating into. They were able to expose all of those skill sets. We've seen some really fantastic things come through in just the last 6 months that, again, we're just unrecognized talent sitting there in the team. The people are feeling empowered to advocate for themselves. which is really important there. They're optimistic in the outcomes. We're trying to have an accelerated model of this to make sure that it's very clear that this isn't just talk. We plan to follow through, and we plan to see each of the individuals on our team have varying degrees of success and immediate or longer term growth within their career plans. We're building the function to support the incredible growth of ServiceNow. And for me, that first stint, 2013 to 2020, I felt pretty accomplished, right? I got there and felt like, okay, I'm good. What else can I do now? It was a challenge over the next couple years to maintain that challenging part of the industry changes, and then come to grips with the fact that maybe I hadn't really set us up for success longer term. The work that we've been doing in this area for the last 9 months, that started 2 or more years ago, has been by at large my most valuable contribution to the program. Knowing that we are setting ourselves up for that next generation of team members to take this program to the next era of what the industry brings has been by far the most valuable work for myself that I've taken home. So it's been really a privilege. So lessons learned. For myself personally, that challenge between 2022 and now was figuring out that I really had to take the people out of it. Again, I was just throwing people at things. I was saying, we've got a lot of work to do. Let's just get it all done. And there was really no strategy to it. So by taking the people out and then saying, here is exactly what our organization is needing, and here's what it's going to take for it to scale into the AI era, it helped us to really clearly say, here's our roles that are available. Here are the ones where if we were to open up shop tomorrow, these would be the job descriptions. And then have our candidates or existing team lined up and say, yes, I would absolutely re-sign up. I would absolutely re-enroll to come to this team and be part of the growth of this department. And that's the role that I want to go after. I'm really excited about, transformation. I'm really excited about policy and controls and compliance. Maybe I'm really excited about analytics and data. Those are the things where previous to that, we were just spread so thin that nobody had the opportunity to make their mark. And that was a big key in taking the people out of it. So for too long, I had led the program, keeping myself in the workforce plan. There were a lot of times where, I would create blind spots for myself because when I was talking about, here's how we need to develop the team, I was still doing it, seeing the contributions that I was making as a director in the day-to-day operational level as a non-gap. I didn't see a problem with that. So even then, by taking myself out of the picture, it really helped to rework all of those things because I was able to see, on that slide, we had a lot of red and yellow there. It was red and yellow that was only being fulfilled by myself. Where's the growth opportunity for me if on a day-to-day basis, I'm going in and helping to cover those gaps myself? So by continuing to consider those daily contributions as a non-gap, I was holding myself back and also masking opportunities for those team members to learn how to solve those problems for themselves. Once I removed all of the names from the process mapping, including mine, I could use that to plot the opportunities and clearly identify those gaps. Second, succession planning isn't one-directional. And this is a long one. It took me a decade to figure that out. With clarity on the roles and succession lines, I was able to accelerate working myself out of a role and beginning my own personal journey or restarting that personal journey. So it's led to valuable discovery on where my contributions can be better felt in the organization, advancing my career options and the careers of those around me. So by making it so that I'm no longer playing that role in all of those yellow and red channels of the capacity planning, it frees me up to go and look at other opportunities and find out where can that strategic bandwidth be placed elsewhere. So what's next for ServiceNow? I'm not done. Workforce planning has to be a continued mindset. So going back to those lessons I learned early on about the importance of clean processes, strong technology, I have to continue using that. But now this time, I'm considering them as important enablers for the people. The people need to find their place. The people need to understand their roles, and then they can come back and full circle help with the investment in better processes and better technology. So that's my story. I know we have time for questions. I don't know if there are many other than what's for lunch, but feel free to ask if you have any. Otherwise, I will see you all out in the lunch area if you have any one-on-one questions that you'd like to ask. Hi, here. I will say it this way. We were at a critical risk of single point of failure. And I think they saw that. I was openly voicing my interest in moving into other areas. Can they solve that problem without me? Sure. If you leave, the one thing that my mom always said to me growing up about jobs was, you're as replaceable as taking your hand out of a bucket of water. They'll be fine. They will replace you. And that would have been true. It would have been painful for me to hear from the outside how well they were doing without me. But at the same time, it would have been painful. I think that was the big piece, that my leadership saw two things. One, that sounds painful. And two, like, what a waste for an investment in someone for 10 years with the organization, and for me to just leave because I didn't feel supported in helping navigate my way out of the problem I had created. That was really the way it was kind of put to me in not so subtle matters, was you can't go anywhere. You got to fix this. And different person might have said, I'm going to go anyways. But I personally love ServiceNow and love what I've done with the team. And again, so happy that I stuck with it, because this has been the most rewarding experience in the last 6 months and the prior 10 years of ever operationalizing any of the other activities. Giving it back to the success of the people and where they go next, I'm just thrilled. The whole team is like lit. It's awesome.
All right. Oh, yes. Right. Right. So it's now what's a problem. They're busy. How I am all weird.
So great question. ServiceNow went public about 8 months before I came. So that was hard. I will tell you that when I joined, the role was be her girl. I joined as an AP team lead, and I came in to help with processing AP batches, disbursement batches, cover for the manager. And she said, oh yeah, and I've got a Concur girl. And I said, oh, totally. No idea what Concur was. Like, not a clue. And the day I walked in and sat down after orientation, she said, by the way, we let her go today. And I was like, what? What now? So I literally on my first day was put into that seat, and she said, you're going to be the AP team lead. You're going to help with all of these backup manager responsibilities, and you're going to answer this email alias, and you're going to help issue credit cards, and you're going to help set up profiles. And that's how it started. So it was from that time, with 1,200 or so active employees, I joined and sat down, and it was really fun because it was approximately 6 months after we had launched our credit card program, and no one knew that if they didn't pay their finance fees, their cards would get shut off. So it was I had a really exciting first 6 months there. And back to the prior question, that's how you get support in building out your team, is when you realize very quickly that the wheels fell off the bus about 6 months ago and are way back in a ditch on the side of the road. So yeah. That's how it started. This is how it's going. Well, no more questions then. Thank you, and let's eat.